We're on segment 4. We're halfway through an 8-segment series on questions and answers live that we did on Facebook. And on 4, we're going to do trailing the right rear on a B mod, the spring box, fixing right rear on a Mod Lite, right front bump engaged on late model, and right rear swivel cups for an IMCA Northern Sport Mod. All that in segment 4. Let's get started.
Eric Turner asked, do you think we need to trail the right rear more, the more load we put in the left rear, and how much is too much trail on the right rear B mod?
Okay, so good question, Eric. Eric's question is how much trail should we put in the right rear? And, you know, I don't know that it's going to dictate load. It's going to be the dictating factor, but the rear steer, you know, I mean, we probably statically need to start at 1/4 to 3/8. And we probably need to work a little bit on the bar down rear steer angle or degree of rear steer. But we need to do that. So there are some very good examples in your area of people that are running rear steer correctly. Okay, and I can't mention their names, but you automatically now know who I'm talking about. Okay, and you know, now this is personal because I think for Eric, I think, you know, you could have a little rear steer load stagger. I think you could work on that combination and shock valving and become the man to beat in your area for sure. And Eric lives in a very, very tough area. So I mean, there's a lot of cats over there that come a calling. So, and he is one of them. He's always competitive. But you know, there's that deal. You can be fast, and you can be fast now, or you could have been fast, or you was fast. You know, and the thing about it is we want to be fast now, and nobody remembers anybody except who's fast now, and that's what we want to do. And it didn't really come out right, you know. So it sounded a little worse than what I meant to make it there, Eric. I'm sorry, but Eric's been a very good driver for lots of years, and I do think, but I do really feel passionate about that rear steer deal and the amount of rear steer and how it affects the car on entry. Thank you, ESPN. But on entry, it affects the car, and the difference is the time it takes the right rear tire to get there and get loaded. Okay, and if you roll in with the car yawed out a little bit and some rear steer in it, it gets there almost instantly, 1 car length. So from the time your right front tire turns in till the time the right rear tire gets to the right front tire spot, it's loaded. Okay, if you're running in without rear steer, you're going to be 3 or 4 car lengths in, waiting on the right rear. That's what I'm talking about. And so I know you understand that now. So, good question. If you have any other questions, Eric, yeah, just let me know.
Walker Green said, any way to keep springs from bowing and bending on USRA mod? A CR USA?
Oh, Crate Racing USA.
Okay.
So Crate Racing USA is kind of like a Northern Sport Mod, has front spring on top. So understand this, when the spring exceeds 2 times its diameter, it's going to bow more. Okay, so the spring wants to bow. So a 13-inch spring is going to bow. And because of the articulation in the rear end and the cups and the mounting and this, no, I don't think there's much you can do. There are some cups. So guys are like, okay, I want to put a swivel cup on top and bottom. Okay, well, that ain't going to work. And in IMCA says they have to be non-swivel. Okay, they can rotate, but they can't swivel. You know, they can't do this. USRA, crate racing USRA, you know, I think you can have a cup that does this, but you really can only have one cup that does that. Okay, you can't have two. But what you need is what we call the Statue of Liberty. You need that cup up the top to do its job. Okay, this will reduce some of the bow. It'll increase the spring life, not enough to make it, depending on what spring you're on, you're not going to make it through the season. So if you're on whatever spring you're on, you're probably going to have multiple springs for the year to get the biggest benefit.
Yes, CRUSA.
Crate Racing USA.
Yeah, okay.
So you have to probably do that spring deal in the right rear. You're just never, that right rear spring on them cars is so important because you're getting a lot of your drive out of that right rear spring. You know, you're getting all your feel out of that right rear spring. So if we can do things to make that right rear spring come to life, then absolutely it needs to be done. And that's what I'm talking about, the cups. You know, there was a discussion earlier, and if you watch our right front video about spring loads and the spring cup, and you see the pictures I put in there about how much the spring was dumped over, okay? Well, when we did the video, we didn't put the bushing back in there, and it held the cup more parallel. It added weight to the spring because it didn't allow it to push out the side because of the bow. So when you have bow in the spring, you're losing weight to the tire. Okay, so you want to try to get that spring in the car as straight up and down as possible when the car is at full hike. It's just virtually impossible in them type of cars. So do all you can. Let me help you with the cup situation. You know, I know there's other options, but I think we got it, you know, hammered out pretty well. So
Derek Ross asked, explain the methods to fix the right rear.
that might be a trade secret. In a dwarf, if I was racing a dwarf car of age, and I have been for a while, and I was turning the car late in the corner past center, basically turning the car on the right rear, I may not fix it because it may not, you know, I mean, it just may be tough. You know, the dwarf cars are, so if you call here, my opinion is the dwarf and the Mod Lites, the difference is in the motor, okay, and the amount of power. But that doesn't mean a dwarf can't handle on the front. It's just that a lot of them guys have not got into good valving. They are older, and nothing wrong with none of that, but they have a driving style, and that's the way they want to drive the car, okay? I know that's not your question. Mod Lite, depending on what kind of car you got, but let's say you got a 6-inch car. You're going to have to, for our team members, we're working on a formula that you can put in your spring rate, your spring travel, and your new travel loads along with your bump. So it's going to take probably a 7-inch spring, a spring, and a bump stop, and a little bit of work to get to that point. If your car is traveling, 2 to 3 inches on the right rear right now, then we need to get it down to about an inch and a quarter. And we're doing it with shock, spring, bump combination. If you're on a long panhard bar, if you're on a panhard bar versus a J bar, you've got to get that thing back to the center of the car. You've got to understand the difference between center of the pinion and center of the car. Okay? You should be center of the car 2 inches to the right. Okay? Your center of the pinion, 3-4 inches to the right. So that's where all the load's being transferred, just to the right rear tire. So, it may have to take some modification to the, but with an offset rear end like you have in these cars, because of the motor and the drive shaft, it creates all the problem in the rear of the car. So if we can fix it, the panhard bar a little, which a lot of guys have, so that's why, I mean, in a Mod Lite, we generally go at the spring shock combination bump. So if you need help with it, call me and I'll help you with it.
Jeremy asks, at what inch number are you wanting the right front to engage the bump in IMCA late model?
Well, 3 inches. So it depends on, so Jeremy's question is, when does the bump engage on an IMCA late model?
The right front.
The right front. And we don't want it to engage too quickly. So we don't want to build load too quickly. So we first have to determine exactly what that bump's going to be doing. Is the bump holding the car off the ground? Is the bump building load to the right front? So if it's holding it off the ground, then we're going to have to determine where the final number is. And so it may engage a little quicker than 3 inch. If we're going to build load at the right front, then we're going to build, we want our 3 inch number to try to be as low as possible. So if we're going 4 inches, then we want our 3 inch number to be as light as possible and our 4 inch number to be at load. If we're going past that, then, or, we like say 4.5, then we might be 3 1/4, 3 inch as low as possible. So we want the bump to build all of its load late in the run. So if you get on our website and you look at the bump loads, we're talking about a Speed Thing Penske style bump. So the white with the blue, white or red stripe, or the red, blue, brown, and there's 4 colors on Penske. So these bumps have the similar characteristics. They just hit harder sooner. So if you look at the load, there's not a lot of load in the bump until the last little bit of travel, and then load ramps up. It's just the harder the bump, the sooner it gets there. So
Jim Erickson asks, should you swivel cut the rear end side of the screw jack side of the right rear spring mount in a USRA B mod?
yes. So Jim's asking, should the right rear be a swivel cup? The chassis side. So that would be probably yes, because it might be simpler. So if the,
or the screw jack side.
well, that's the frame side.
Okay.
So if the cup on the axle could have the swivel on it, then the cup on the screw jack could have the bearing. It could have a bearing on it, and that might not be a bad combination. That'd be a great combination. But if you're solid on the axle and you ain't changing parts, then make it swivel on the more freedom. The easier it swivels, and the less binding it gets into. But understand, that's what I was trying to say earlier, that the swivel can kill some of the rate. Okay, so you're giving up tire load, and you may have to increase your load over there, but you're giving up tire load to increase spring life. So, I mean, it might be worth loading the thing up hard and, spending another $80 a year on a right rear spring.
That's all right now. That's all the questions.